Double exposure of film photography is probably the most fun you can have with a camera, especially if you manage to positively surprise yourself with the results. But even if things don't go exactly the way that you planned, the unexpected nature of this kind of film photography, double exposure film photography, is really part of the charm. And today we're going to look at two rolls of double exposure film photography I did on Portra 800, doing some old school portrait photography. Here's how it all went down. Because I'm using a point and shoot film camera, the Ricoh GR1V in this case, the only way to actually do double exposures with this camera is by running the film through the camera twice. There's no lever, there's no setting for double exposures, but luckily this is a method that works with any film camera. You can always shoot one roll twice. Because I wanted to do these kind of moody and melancholic portraits, I started with the complementary part. So I took an entire roll's worth of images of raindrops, the city in the rain, and more raindrops, this time in the shower. But as always with double exposures, remember to underexpose each photo because you're exposing it twice. I did make some mistakes during this process, more about that later. But the next step, once we've finished shooting that one roll of the initial round of images, we gotta somehow extract the film out of the canister, pull out the tip so we can put it through the camera twice. The process was simple, but a little bit harder than I realized. So we're gonna take the roll out and then try to put it through the camera again. Gonna roll the film to be close to the edge so that you feel resistance. Then take another roll of film, make it wet here, and then try to fish it out. Now it's wet. Didn't work. Jesus Christ. Please work this time. There you go. That was a bit difficult. Now we gotta put this again and hopefully it goes without problems. As you can see, I like to keep things professional on this channel. Anyway, let's move to the fun part, some portraits. During the shoot I was actually using a portable projector as a way to light up the model's face and only took a couple of double exposures, but here are the results. This shot is pretty interesting and it's a good example of the unexpected nature of film photography that I was just talking about, because my intention was to only expose the model's eyes with the light on her eyes, but because it's an auto exposure film camera, it took the reading from the whole scene and it ended up overexposing the eyes. So the eyes are actually blown out in this case. So the result is completely different from what I was expecting or intending, but it actually still kind of works. It looks pretty cool, pretty interesting, and it's not a shot that I would have been able to come up with if I hadn't simply made this mistake. And you know, that is part of the surprising element that can be really fun sometimes when it comes to film photography, double exposure film photography, especially. Resuming with another portrait shoot a few days later, it was time to finish the roll. Where are you going?
Try to see.
Now, while there were some cool results on the first roll of photos, I also made some mistakes and I wanted to fix those mistakes for the second round. The first mistake was especially when I was using the LED light on the red setting. It was either too bright or I was overexposing the scene. So for the next one I would make it a little bit less bright or underexposed even more. And also just my compositions were a little bit cluttered. I wasn't careful enough when composing the first set of images, so sometimes there's just stuff that is not supposed to be in the frame. Most notably, my LED light is just shown visible in many of the frames and I had to try to clone it out in Photoshop later and wasn't even successful. So it ruined a little bit of those photos. So I wanted to do this again, but this time learn from the mistakes that I made, and let's see if the second roll is any better. At least second time around, I managed to take the film out a little bit easier. I didn't have to rage at that part anymore. On the second roll we have the same camera, the same roll of film, but this time I took it all the way onto the rainy streets, shot a couple of regular street photos of the rain, a couple of raindrops, and even a couple of signs, LED signs, neon signs, whatever. And the second time around the extraction process of the film was much easier. Anyway, let's move on to the portrait shoot and the better versions of the results. And I want to leave you with a couple of tips if you're going to do this or attempt double exposure photography yourself. First of all, the LED light is pretty important because you're exposing the highlights. It allows you to control so many of the elements, the parts of the image that you want to overlap. And these lights are pretty inexpensive. There's so many different brands and versions of them. I'm going to leave a couple links in the description so you can check those out. I highly recommend getting one of those if you're doing even regular portrait photography, but especially double exposure portrait photography on film. And on the first shoot I was also using a portable projector. That is a bit more of a niche thing, but it's also a fun thing to play around with. Also in the description, I'm gonna leave that one there. Now sometimes you mess up the exposure, you can still fix it in post sometimes. What I like to do is go on Lightroom and use the HSL color manipulation panel, whatever it's called, and take the part of the image that I want to make brighter and just increase the luminance of that color like I did it for this image. You can't fix everything, but you can fix some small mistakes that way, and also just cloning out distracting details sometimes is a pretty good idea if you made the compositions a little bit too cluttered or if you forgot to exclude some element. And on that note, I would just like to again point out the fact that if you're doing this method of running the film through the camera twice, when you're doing the initial round of exposures or the non-portrait part, just try to make those elements or compositions minimal as possible, because you know you're combining two compositions. So if they're already busy, you're combining two busy compositions into something that's just going to be an overly busy mess. So just more minimal compositions combined is usually a better recipe. And the thing is, when doing this method of shooting 36 images in a row, then maybe taking a break and then going onto the portrait shoot, you're not gonna remember which order of photos you take, unless you're like a genius or you made notes, so you're a nerd. I didn't want to attempt doing that. What I instead did is I just made sure to shoot images that would fit portraits in any case, so I didn't have to remember. And then that also makes the surprise part at the end more fun. And lastly, running the film through the camera is not the only way to shoot double exposures. If you have a SLR camera, for example, like I have here, there's a way to kind of glitch the lever part and shoot it without having to run the film through the camera twice. I did a video on this method maybe a year ago. You can find it on my channel and check it out as well. And there's also more tips and images and examples of double exposure film photography. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.